Hey everybody, welcome to Brit Shocked. You're me, BP1, no BP2. He's on his Ollie Bobs, and I will be supplementing some videos on my own. Today's video is Robert Hanssen, the FBI mole who spied for the KGB, brought to you by Biographics, who we've done before. This is a request for Amanda. I hope you're getting better, Amanda, feeling better out there. Now, don't know much about this. Looked it up. Robert Hanssen, he actually died last year in 2023 from recording this video. Part of, if you don't know, the KGB, which you probably do if you're watching this, but if you don't know, they were the Soviet security agency, secret security agency from 1954 to 1991 before it was broken up. So we're going to go into this. Normally does a really good job by graphics of giving you a lot of information. So we need to get it up there. All right, let's get into it.
By Squarespace, from websites and online stores to marketing
tools. We'll move on.
In the acronym BUY on their eyes. What? In the acronym as old as humankind. I is ideology. This can be even more powerful than money. Sometimes in the name of misguided idealism, secret agents can turn against their own countries, as in the case of famous Soviet double agent Kim Philby. C is for compromise, blackmail or coercion. An unwilling agent may be forced to hand over secrets lest compromising or embarrassing details are divulged. And E is for ego, the most dangerous and unpredictable reason. Playing two sides can provide excitement and a feeling of power. Today's protagonist, Robert Hanssen, was an FBI agent who served his country for 20 years. At the end of the Cold War, Hanssen sold classified secrets to the Soviet and Russian intelligence services. He compromised the security of his country, and he put the lives of his colleagues in danger. He realized his mistakes and he stopped spying, but eventually he returned to his duplicitous role with a vengeance. So what were his motives? Well, apparently it was a combination of money and ego, but there may have been a darker demon lurking under the facade of Hanssen, who was a devout Catholic and a father of 6. So in today's Biographics, well, let's dig in and let's find out.
An accountant. Money.
Robert Philip Hanssen was born in Chicago, Illinois, just weeks before D-Day on April the 18th, 1944. On the day of his birth, his father was not there as he was serving in the U.S. Navy during World War II. In peacetime, Hanssen Sr. was a police officer in the Chicago Police Department. The old man was one who would not suffer fools, neither in the streets nor at home. As Robert grew up, his father was reported to have frequently abused him, ranting that he was a failure and would never succeed in life. After graduating from high school, Hanssen attended Knox College in Illinois, where he studied chemistry and Russian. After graduation, he considered becoming a dentist, but eventually he set his eyes on completing an MBA, and then he began a career as an accountant. In 1968, Robert married his fiancée, Bernadette Walk, known as Bonnie. Bonnie, a Catholic, was born into a family that was much wealthier than Robert's. Influenced by her devotion, he converted to the same faith and joined Opus Dei, an exclusive conservative order within the church. The new couple had 6 children and committed to send each one of them to exclusive private schools. In accordance with Opus Dei tradition, they would also commit to donate a portion of their income to the charitable works of their parish.
Money and religion.
This tithing lifestyle, it surely took its toll on Robert's paycheck. Strangely, after a few years working as an accountant, he decided to enter law enforcement, which generally tends to be a less lucrative career. Regardless, Hanssen joined the force and worked as a policeman in Chicago for 4 years. Thanks to his background, Robert was placed in an elite unit investigating corruption and white-collar crimes. After this stint with the boys in blue, Robert decided he would join those in grey, the FBI. At this stage, he had the right CV to join the agency. His credentials as an accountant with an MBA plus 4 years in the Chicago Anti-Corruption Squad made him a good fit for the agency's Financial Crimes Division. He was assigned to the division's headquarters in Gary, Indiana, right out of the FBI Academy. But even as Hanssen investigated white-collar criminals in the Midwest, he was dreaming of something different. Hanssen had grown up with a fondness of espionage. He was a huge James Bond fan, devouring Ian Fleming's books as well as the movies. For some reason, he even opened a Swiss bank account. Unfortunately, for Hanssen, 007 remained nothing more than a number on one of his spreadsheets. Hanssen, though, had reasons to hope for a more exciting assignment. In 1978, he filed a transfer request to the FBI office in New York City, one of the great spy capitals of the world. He was assigned to the Soviet Counterintelligence Analytical Squad. And with this, it really seemed like adventure might be finally calling. But it wasn't so. You see, Hanssen's supervisors described him as smart, technically proficient, and analytical. They marveled at his skills with early computer systems. But they also considered him lacking in field operations ability, and they assigned him to administrative work. This crushed his fantasies of going undercover, chasing Soviet spies in the underbelly of New York. Hanssen's job was to manage the New York field office's counterintelligence database. He had joined the FBI to hunt spies, but the agency made him a glorified librarian. In all honesty, though, the job description actually sounds quite cool. Hanssen's job was to assemble a database of foreign officials posted in New York who, while posing as diplomats, were actually intelligence officers spying on the United States. Many of them were agents of the main Soviet intelligence agency, the KGB, or its military counterpart, a larger but less famous agency, the GRU. But this was not enough for Robert Hanssen.
That's his in, isn't it? That's his way in. Oh, we got advert here. Apologies for this. There we go.
At this stage, Special Agent Hanssen felt wronged by the FBI. He also felt the increasing weight of his bills piling up. His growing family needed more space, and Hanssen's traditional stance required him to be the main breadwinner, requiring Bonnie to stay at home. These may have been the reasons that pushed him to the edge of treason for the first time. In November 1979, Hanssen used his growing knowledge of Soviet operations to contact the GRU and volunteer his services. Clever and stealthy from the start, Hanssen concealed his identity from his Soviet contacts. From 1979 until 1981, he left information stolen from his department, the Soviet Counterintelligence Unit, in dead drops in exchange for a sum of money that sources say fell somewhere between $21,000 to $30,000. That's about $60,000 to $90,000 in today's money. Dead drops are a common method used by spies to exchange information. Spy number one drops his or her messages in an agreed hidden place, behind a loose brick on a certain wall, for example. The spy then leaves a commonly understood sign, such as a simple chalk mark on another place. The handlers then know that they have mail waiting and they can pick up the bundle. The intel that Hanssen provided the Soviets was highly valuable. Hanssen even revealed the name of a Russian general, Dmitry Polyakov, who had been providing information to the Americans. Polyakov was put under surveillance by the Russians. He was eventually arrested as a spy and executed in 1988.
Oh, okay. I suppose, yeah, that is the
GRU
intel,
experience was a positive test for Hanssen's resolve and ability. He must
have thought, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, as an insider, he must have thought, okay, right, I've got this, you know, Russian spy here that's working for us in the US. Give him their name, they execute him. I mean, he must be thinking about himself. He think obviously, you know, these spies, they think they cover their tracks, but it quite easily could be one of those insiders in Russia, you know, of another spy finding that information out that he's been found out. But I guess that's the world you live in when you're at that level. Oh, it's a ring behind. Anyway, let's keep going.
Continued his work for them, but in the spring of 1980, Hanssen was caught. One can hide secrets from the FBI, the GRU, even the KGB, but not from a spouse. Bonnie found a strange letter from the GRU to Hanssen in the basement of their house in Scarsdale, New York. Hanssen downplayed it, and he told Bonnie that he had been giving the Soviets junk information to trick them into giving him money. In a later testimony, Bonnie said that she demanded that her husband go with them to see their Roman Catholic priest to confess. They then drove to New Rochelle to meet with Reverend Robert Bucchiarelli, a priest also associated with Opus Dei. Father Bucchiarelli came up with a plan. If Robert gave the money from the Soviets to charity and promised not to spy again, the priest committed to not reporting the matter to the FBI. Now, in theory, he shouldn't have done this anyway, as confessions are protected by an oath of secrecy.
Absolutely, they're all
I guess,
bent.
Whatever. Hanssen agreed. Bonnie, who at the time was expecting their fourth child, was greatly relieved, but she was also determined to hold her husband to the deal. Robert admitted that he had already spent most of the GRU money, but Bonnie insisted that he repay to charity the full original notional amount. He began to make small payments over several years to a charity affiliated with Mother Teresa's Catholic organization, which moved the family quite close to bankruptcy. Over the following years, Bonnie kept close tabs on Roberts, checking if he was making the payments and even questioning him on whether he was still working with the Russians. It seems to me at this point the FBI would have maybe considered hiring Bonnie Hanssen. In the early 1980s, Hanssen was transferred to FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. To his colleagues in the Bureau, who were still oblivious to his actual conduct, he seemed to be a model agent. In office chit-chat, Hanssen often spoke of his engagement with Opus Dei and appeared to be a devoted Catholic and an anti-communist. From 1981 until 1985, he served in the budget and Soviet analytical units at FBI headquarters. He may still have been a desk jockey, but he was one nested at the center of a web of information flowing to and from the intelligence division. As one of the few skilled computer operators, Hanssen's cyber tendrils took in information from the NSA and CIA, reviewing info on the FBI's most sensitive human assets and technical operations against the USSR. Finally,
I guess in the 80s as well, I mean, obviously there was a certain amount of information on the early computers, very, very early computers, but a lot of this was, paper, wasn't it? So I guess it's a little bit harder to, today's security is very secure, certainly online, to a degree, obviously. But when you got pen and paper, unless it's in a vault, but these people, they got access to all of it, The files, the old filing cabinets, flicking through all them. They're the classic sort of James Bondy sort of films, getting into, finding that info about each person. So different world back then in the early 80s of what you could get hold of and how you could get hold of it. So, yeah, interesting.
Finally, Hanssen realized that the best spies were not flashy James Bonds, but rather the smart men and women who lurked in the shadows, manipulating information unnoticed and unknown. In September of 1985, Hanssen returned to the New York field office. This time, he supervised a foreign counterintelligence squad which gave him access to a wealth of Soviet spy information. This included the identity of the FBI's Soviet sources and informants, as well as the locations of KGB defectors in the US. Emboldened by his former success with the GRU, Hanssen graduated to the big leagues. He was now going to spy for the KGB. And if you want to graduate to the big leagues, pro tip, do not join the KGB. Probably not the best of moves right there, but instead take a step in the right direction with Squarespace. Now, maybe you've got some idea for a website or a business or a YouTube channel, podcast, something like that, floating around in your head, and you might be thinking, strange-looking envelope.
Feeling overwhelmed by the constant noise from your kids? Thousands of parents struggle with this every day, but there's a
envelope to his house in Alexandria, Virginia. DebbierR opens the envelope and found a second sealed envelope inside. A note with instructions forbade DebbierR from opening the second envelope and demanded he take it to his colleague Viktor Cherkashin. It was clear to DebbierR that whoever had sent the envelope was aware that he was, in fact, a KGB officer of the PR line. The KGB organized its espionage activities into distinct lines or sections with different intelligence and counterintelligence responsibilities. The PR collected information about political, economic, and military strategic intelligence. Each line of activity came under the direction of the KGB resident and official member of the Soviet embassy, who was in fact a covert spy master. Cherkashin, he was Viktor's resident. The next day, DebbierR handed over the package to Cherkashin, a veteran spy who also had been a handler of Aldrich Ames, the CIA's most dangerous mole. The letter read, Dear Mr. Cherkashin, soon I will send a box of documents to Mr. DebbierR. They are from certain of the most sensitive and highly compartmented projects of the US intelligence community. All are originals to aid in verifying their authenticity. I trust that an officer of your experience will handle them appropriately. I believe they are sufficient to justify a $100,000 payment to me. I must warn of certain risks to your security of which you may not be aware. Your service has recently suffered setbacks. I warn that Mr. Boris Yushin, Mr. Sergei Motorin, and Mr. Valery Martinov have been recruited by our special services. My identity and actual position in the community must be left unstated to ensure my security. I will add 6, you subtract 6 from stated months, days, and times in both directions of our future communications. And then, as a signature, a simple B. Cherkashin had struck gold. 3 double agents exposed in one stroke simply by opening an envelope. And just like that, Hanssen had scored $100,000. His first letter to Shurgushin had also caused enormous damage. The FBI and CIA relied on Yushin, Motorin, and Martinov to spy for the US and provide critical inside information about Soviet espionage operations.
That's
After
it, giving
Hanssen's
them
letter,
away.
the KGB flew each of the spies back to Moscow and tried them for espionage. After sham trials, the Soviets executed Motorin and Martinov. Yushin
just kill them
received
anyway.
a 15-year sentence. From 1985 to 1991, Hanssen handed to the KGB some of the most important counterintelligence and military secrets in the hands of the US security services. By 1991, Hanssen had completely compromised the FBI's counterintelligence database. Meanwhile, Hanssen was counting his money at his FBI desk, laughing while the agency looked for the mole in all of the wrong places. He could have quite easily have been caught at this time. During a visit from her brother, Mark Walk, Bonnie had confided to him that she was alarmed. She had found $5,000 in cash at home and feared that Robert may have started spying for the Russians again. Mark was an FBI agent himself, although based in Chicago. He reported this to his supervisors in 1990, but they didn't take any meaningful action. It's quite surprising. In the following years, Robert managed to avoid detection as he skillfully worked with the KGB handlers without ever meeting them. In one occasion, he slipped up speaking to a Russian agent over a payphone. This could have easily given him away, as presumably all Soviet embassy lines were being tapped. But again, nothing happened. In general, Hanssen and Becca relied on a system of dead drops and signals in public places. For instance, a piece of adhesive tape placed on a sign in a park in Virginia would indicate that a package had been placed under a small footbridge in the park. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. This was bad news for Hanssen. During the early 1990s, KGB veterans began to approach Western intelligence agencies and spill the beans on their recent operations. Hanssen, he became alarmed. What if a Russian with knowledge of his activities signaled the Americans to his true identity? For 8 years, Hanssen behaved like a Boy Scout, at least spy-wise. He stopped contacting the Russians while waiting for his inevitable arrest. But again, nothing happened. So in 1999, while working as an FBI liaison with the State Department, he fell back into bad habits and started selling American secrets once again.
Oh, he's a nightmare, isn't he?
That a former colleague on the other side of the former Iron Curtain had begun...
I mean, fair play. Well, not fair play, is it? It's not fair play at all, but to get away with it for so long, he must have been bloody good at hiding his tracks. And playing a game where he was just not even thought of. But for that many years, you'd thought they would have combed him out, wouldn't you? Eventually, this keeps happening. We've had so many, who's still left? Him. He's been here all along. Fair play to him for being in that role for so long, but that is just... a disaster, isn't it, from a US security point of view, to have somebody in that role for so many years, 80 to 99. I mean, you're looking at a whole career's worth just sat there milking it. Anyway,
doing exactly the same thing. A former KGB agent had come across Hanssen's KGB file and contacted US intelligence with the intention of selling it. Realizing the importance of the material, the US paid $7 million for it. In 20 years of selling classified intel, Hanssen had racked up approximately $1.4 million. This Russian guy, in perhaps 2 months of work, had made $7 million. Either the Americans had deeper pockets, or Hanssen was a bit of a terrible negotiator. The dossier sold to the Americans. It did not specify the mole's name. Evidence in the file, though, it pointed to Hanssen, and he was put under close surveillance from Special Agent O'Neill, a younger colleague who posed as his assistant. The net was beginning to close in.
Walk away now, my friend. Walk away now. Demons. Right.
On February the 18th, 2001, Hanssen was arrested in a park in Northern Virginia after he had placed a package at his usual dead drop location. The evidence against him, it was overwhelming, and to avoid the death penalty, Hanssen confessed and agreed to be debriefed by American intelligence officials. In May 2002, Hanssen was sentenced to life in prison. News reports claims that intelligence agencies were not entirely satisfied with the extent of his cooperation. They believed he was holding back information, but the government could not prove that he had lied, and wishing to avoid a public trial, they did not void his plea agreement. The Hanssen case, it was regarded as a low point for the FBI. Hanssen had been trusted by his superiors. He could have been stopped on more than one occasion, and his betrayal had gone undetected for years. The government stated that Hanssen had been paid approximately $1.4 million during his spying career, although most of it was held in a Russian bank account. The damage Hanssen did, it was catastrophic. At least 3 Russian double agents had been executed or imprisoned because of him, and it was suspected that he compromised dozens of intelligence operations. For example, he had sold the information that the Americans had dug a tunnel under the Russian embassy in Washington to install listening devices. Hanssen was incarcerated at the Supermax Federal Prison in Colorado. Fellow convicts include the Unabomber, one of the Boston Marathon bombers, and a number of organized crime figures. But now the question comes to, why did Hanssen betray his country? During his sessions with investigators, Hanssen claimed that his motivation had always been financial, yet some investigators believed anger about how his father treated him as a child triggered his need to rebel against authority. Author Eric O'Neill, on the other hand, speculated that his motives lay in his egomania and his thirst for adventure. The man himself told investigators what had sparked his spying as fear and rage. Fear of being a failure and fear of not being able to provide for my family.
Yeah, but at the same time, if he's made for 1.4 million... and most of it's in a Russian bank account that he probably didn't really access much for his family anyway. Like I said, she only found 5k in cash. So I guess, cash was going to be a bit more difficult for the agents to pass the packages and so forth. 1.4 million and it's, in a Russian bank account. Was that really? Could you say it was his ego and money? I mean, from the outside looking in, you think, yeah, probably. But if you haven't got that access to the money, what was it? Maybe it was just, like you say, an infatuation for the Bond world and just being in that world. Maybe manipulation of people and going undetected had the thrill of that rather than anything else. But yeah, what a mole.
Said he felt rage towards the FBI each time he was denied a promotion. He was determined to prove that they had made a mistake in not promoting him by pulling off increasingly large-scale feats of espionage. Hanssen was convinced that other FBI agents lacked his commitment to the Bureau, and the Bureau, in his view, was not fighting the Russians in the right way. As reporters dug deeper into the case, more disturbing psychological demons started to emerge. Friends of Hanssen told journalists that he had exhibited eccentric behavior, which included an obsession with pornography and sex in general. Leslie Stahl from CBS reported that Hanssen had taken in the habit of sending nude pictures of his wife to a friend of his. He even posted sexually explicit online stories about Bonnie on the internet. Hanssen got to the point of inviting his friend to watch a live stream of him having sex with Bonnie on a secretly installed CCTV system.
Alright, yeah, that's
nothing
not right,
about any
is
of
it?
this.
Yeah,
Hanssen's erratic behavior, it escalated, including numerous visits to strip clubs where he tried to convert strippers to Catholicism. Psychiatrist Alan Salarian was hired and later fired by Hanssen's defense team to examine him. According to Dr. Salarian, spying for the Soviets for the devoutly religious Hanssen was a way to escape those sexual problems. He stated, Hanssen's espionage was an escape from his sexual demons. When he found himself in exciting, dangerous positions such as espionage and spying, he found that his demons slowed down. He is driven by demons, by thoughts, unwanted thoughts. Dr. Salarian, who spent 30 hours interviewing Hanssen, concluded that the double agent was not immoral. He was simply an ill man suffering from a severe psychological disorder of a sexual nature who could find respite from his torments only by putting himself in risky situations.
Nah.
In 2007, Special Agent O'Neill, instrumental in Hanssen's capture, worked with director and screenwriter Billy Ray on the film Breach, a realistic portrayal of the last year of Hanssen's career. Author Eric O'Neill published Grey Day in 2013, also about Hanssen's story, in which he is depicted as America's first cyber spy. Spies, secret agents, the intelligence community, it's always going to capture our imagination when their activities appear to be outside of the boundaries of accepted morality. So what can lead a man to sell and betray his colleagues and the security of his country? If you look at the mice set of motives, most of the time it can be because of money or a true belief in lofty ideals, or maybe he has been blackmailed and strong-armed, or maybe it's just down to one's ego and the need to feed it. Hanssen's betrayal ultimately may have been down to his ego, but not as a way to satisfy it, rather as a way to placate those obsessions that he could not control. So we hinted at another mole in our video today. Please let us know if you'd like to hear.
I think he's just, driven in a completely different way. You never know with these people until you get inside their mind. But yeah, it's a difficult one. Money, yes, to a degree, but for me, I think he just had an infatuation around. I mean, if you spend that amount of time in it, doing it, then you've got an infatuation with it. Otherwise, if you're doing it for money, then over 19 years or whatever, I would expect to have earned more than 1.4 million as a spy. You know what I mean? I mean, come on. Especially that other guy, 2 months' work, 7 million. Happy days, isn't it? Anyway, interesting. Good one, Amanda. Again, you know, you come up with these videos that we just wouldn't normally watch. And normally, obviously, I would do this with BP2, but and not being around, and I wanted to make sure we got this one done and sent out. So, yeah, really interesting. Robert Hanssen. Remember that name? Yeah, I only found out on the Wikipedia that said he died in 2023, so I assume in prison and not out of prison. He didn't necessarily touch on what happened after that with him, but yeah, very interesting character, interesting what drives people to do that sort of thing on a I was going to say daily basis, but it is really, isn't it? That's where you're going to work, and it'll always be in his mind no matter what he's doing. He's doing the work for the US as you would normally do, but then you're in the background, you're taking all that information and working out what you're gonna sell. So crazy, bad press for the US. That's probably a disaster with their national security. Who knows? This crap's still going on now, isn't it? So we just don't know. It's all hidden online and all sorts of places. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Britpops React. We'll be back tomorrow. Me and BP2. We are back every day with a new video, and you might see some random ones from me popping up here, there, and everywhere as well. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, bye.